The John Wick franchise has been one of the most surprising recent successes in Hollywood. An action movie based on a completely original idea has since spawned 2 sequels, and a third one is on the way. But what does the long-term future of the franchise look like? Well, this video is all about the hypothetical John Wick 5 and everything else John Wick. And we've got good news all around, folks. First, there was actually some suspense around the 4th and 5th John Wick movies. With the success of the 3rd installment, the 4th one was basically destined to happen. Indeed, Lionsgate initially opted to film the 4th and 5th movies back-to-back in 2020. However, the next year they changed course, confirming that the 4th movie would move ahead on its own, but staying mum on movie number 5. Things took a worse turn for the franchise's future when Chapter 4's filming ran into problems. The movie was set for a 2021 release date, but then 2 major catastrophes happened to it: COVID-19 and The Matrix Resurrections. IndieWire reported early in 2020 that the movie would be missing out on its original release date as its production and The Matrix sequel's production had been stalled by the pandemic. When the wheels started turning again, Keanu Reeves went off to shoot Resurrections, which delayed John Wick even further. The movie is now set to release in 2023, 2 years late. With Chapter 4 in limbo, Chapter 5's fate was even further cast in doubt. Things only became slightly clearer when the 4th installment began shooting in earnest. The suspense went on for a couple of months after that, but we can rest easy, folks. Director Chad Stahelski is pretty sure that John Wick Chapter 5 will happen eventually. Lionsgate is totally committed to John Wick. The movie has no scheduled production yet, but the green light is still on for the movie.
No more guns, John. No more bullets. What's that? Hunt.
Now, here's what Chad had to say in an interview with Collider. He made it clear that the studio was very much on board with continuing the John Wick franchise, more so than even Chad is. For him, it's a shock that he'll be turning up for a 5th installment of the franchise. In fact, he's amazed that there's a franchise at all. The first film was just a goof and a fun little action movie that the director wanted to do, and it has gone on to change his life and Keanu Reeves. He's flattered that people keep turning up for movie after movie of the John Wick series, and they still want more. Naturally, it makes him feel like one of the luckiest people in the world, and he feels like this demand is a credit for the work he, the cast, and the crew are doing. That being said, he and Reeves would be willing to stop the train when the audience is ready. After all, both of them have loads of other projects lined up. Reeves will be starring in the upcoming Devil in the White City alongside Leo DiCaprio and in front of the camera with Martin Scorsese, while Stahelski will be directing a remake of Highlander, as well as doing adaptations of Project Nemesis and the video game Ghost of Tsushima. But clearly the world hasn't had enough of John Wick yet, so Chad and Keanu shouldn't be thinking about quitting anytime soon.
Shot my dog.
I get it.
We gotta go. Now.
You, working again?
No, just sorting some stuff out.
Moving on, we have a quick rundown of everything to expect from the John Wick franchise. As we've all learned to our joy recently, John Wick Chapter 4 is on the way. Specifically, the movie will crash into theaters worldwide on the 24th of March in 2023. Chapter 5 will be a little ways off, and we'll be talking about it later. But first, let's look at all the spin-offs in the works. The franchise will naturally expand everything we've seen in the lore of the John Wick universe. One of the movies currently in the works is Ballerina, a movie that'll focus on the ballet school of assassins that we saw in the movies. Directed by Len Wiseman, the movie will star Ana de Armas and will reportedly feature cameos from Ian McShane and Keanu Reeves. The movie started filming earlier in November. Another spin-off movie would focus on Sophia, focusing on Halle Berry's character, and be based on a failed spin-off movie for Berry's Bond franchise character Jinx. Although not much is known about this movie, it has no set shooting or release dates. John Wick's TV entry will be The Continental. Named after the hotel, the series is being developed by Stahelski and Derek Hallstad. Keanu Reeves will return in a story that takes place before the events of the movies, incorporating real-world events. The show is slated to premiere on Peacock sometime in 2023.
He did warn you. What the hell?
Now here's everything we know about John Wick Chapter 5. Although director Chad Stahelski has confirmed that the movie will happen, he hasn't elaborated on when the movie is going to start shooting. In fact, we talked about the movie Ballerina before, and it could end up being the 5th release in this franchise, meaning that the next John Wick movie could be a long way off. In more bad news, the 5th John Wick is set to lose the original screenwriter. We've mentioned Derek Hallstad elsewhere in this video, and he was a co-creator of the John Wick story. Losing him is going to be a shame, but for Chapter 3, he did share writing responsibilities with Shay Hatton, Chris Collins, and Mark Abrams. The three will probably help pen the scripts of future movies, with Shay Hatton writing the screenplay for Ballerina. Mike Finch wrote the fourth movie, and there's also a possibility that Finch will take on writing duties for the fifth movie as well, depending on how his writing on the fourth movie plays with audiences and critics. So while we'd love for Kolstad to stay, it does look like Lionsgate has been laying the foundations for this franchise to continue without the minds that helped create it in the first place. Honestly though, that doesn't always turn out well. At least Chad Stahelski is in it for the long haul. His vision can help steer the John Wick franchise even as others come and go. With Chapter 4 still on the way, we'll try to get a picture of what the plot of Chapter 5 might be like. It's a tradition for John Wick that at the end of each movie, the protagonist finds himself in a worse spot than he was in at the start. The first movie ends with Wick fully returning to his old life as a hitman, with the realization that his retirement didn't last as long as he wanted it to. Chapter 2 concludes with Wick on the run as all the underworld assassins get ready to compete to be the first to kill him. The third movie ends with him teaming up with the Bowery King to go to war with the High Table. In interviews, Stahelski has made it clear that things will get even worse for him as Chapter 4 goes on. He says that this won't be the movie that'll give him a happy ending, even if he survives everything he's been dragged into. In fact, Stahelski challenged the audience to come up with a happy ending for a guy that's killed 300 people. In reality, there's no way that John Wick gets to retire with a love interest or anything of the sort. It's hard to imagine how things could get worse for Wick at this point, besides the possibility of him losing his dog again. But we're sure that Chad will find a way. Now, if you're like us, you might find the talk of happy endings interesting. Supposedly, Chapter 4 has concluding elements, one of the things that sowed doubt around Chapter 5. It's also interesting that Stahelski says a guy like Wick can't retire with a love interest, and Chapter 4's trailer shows Wick kissing someone. That sounds like ill tidings for that woman, but generally it sounds like Stahelski is getting ready to wrap up the story in his franchise. Coupled with the fact that Chapters 4 and 5 were meant to shoot back-to-back, a movie similar to Marvel shooting Infinity War and Endgame at the same time, we're getting a pretty strong impression of our time with John Wick is running out. Chapter 4 may set the assassin on a path that leads to whatever terrible endings Stahelski has in store for him. It'll probably be death. At this point, it's more interesting to wonder what the criminal underground will look like when all is said and done. The war between the Bowery and the High Table will probably change the power dynamics of the underworld. For all we know, Wick may find himself destroying both of them, leaving a power gap at the top and the possibility of the underworld falling into anarchic chaos. That would be a pretty dark note to end on, but that's what Stahelski thinks should happen. That's it for today's video. Let us know what you're excited to see from John Wick Chapter 4. Also, what do you think Chapter 5 will look like based on everything we've seen and heard so far? Let us know in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.